Welcome back to watch The Booker Man and to the 5th week of Impact Wrestling 2012, and we're coming off the back of a pay-per-view week, so while we don't have anything pre-booked from the previous episodes, it is obviously a show that should have a lot of intrigue after what went down at the first Impact Wrestling pay-per-view Genesis. You can see on screen there, probably the main story coming out of it was after CM Punk successfully retained the Impact World Championship. Jeff Hardy made his return, or his first appearance on Impact Wrestling, you could say. You can see everything else that happened on that card, including an incredible rating, the 98 with Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe becoming the Impact World Tag Team Champions. A really good showing for the first Impact Wrestling pay-per-view. It's just as important now to follow it up with a really good episode of Impact Wrestling, and I think we've got just that. As I previously mentioned, the big story coming out of the pay-per-view was the return of Jeff Hardy confronting CM Punk. So his entrance opens Impact Wrestling. We thought we'd strike while the iron was hot, and Jeff says that it is great to be back, but he sees that while everything else seems to have changed in this company since he was last around, one thing hasn't. CM Punk is still coming out here week after week, running his mouth and talking crap. Punk managed to avoid Hardy by just inches on Sunday, but he's calling him out right now. He doesn't want to waste any more time. Instead of the Impact World Champion, Samoa Joe comes out. Joe refuses to enter the ring, reminding viewers that he was ambushed by Jeff on Sunday, and he also highlights that CM Punk wasn't happy about what Jeff Hardy did either, so he's not here tonight. The fans can thank Jeff Hardy for that, and their own reaction to Jeff's return. CM Punk isn't going to show up for a bunch of ungrateful idiots. Hardy throws his arms up. He isn't surprised to see these tactics used by Punk and by Joe, and he says that in that case, he challenges Samoa Joe to fight him right now. If he's so angry about what happened at the pay-per-view, surely he'll want some revenge. Samoa Joe accepts the challenge, but says that he'll see Jeff next week. These fans have already seen enough of Jeff Hardy tonight, so they're going to have to wait 7 days to see Samoa Joe versus Jeff Hardy. As Joe goes to leave, however, he is followed by Jeff Hardy, who leaves the ring going straight after Samoa Joe, and a brawl breaks out, the two men having to be pulled apart as the show goes into the first break. But as well as capitalising on Jeff Hardy's return, we also want a really hot start to the show with that chaotic fight breaking out. And I'd probably say that with what we've got booked, chaos is certainly the word of the night. As we come back to the second part of the show, Kevin Steen and Paul London are seen to be approaching the Motor City Machine Guns in the back. Steen and London tell Chris Sabin to step aside. They want to talk to Alex Shelley. Sabin says that they aren't going to fall for that, but Shelley says that he can deal with these guys and tells Sabin not to worry. Sabin nonetheless refuses to leave Alex Shelley alone with the two men who defeated them at Genesis. Kevin Steen laughs and says that this sums him up. Sabin is holding Shelley back just like he always has. But it doesn't have to be like this. London adds that in the Bound for Glory series, everybody was speaking about Sabin being the one to carry Shelley. Why was it then that it was Shelley's body that buckled under the pressure? Steen adds that he didn't see Sabin anywhere around when Shelley was pinned at Genesis. Kevin Steen says that Sunday's pay-per-view proved one thing above all else: the tag team division has passed by the Motor City Machine Guns, and it's time that they went their separate ways. However, there is still hope for Alex Shelley. Tonight, Alex is scheduled to face Paul London one-on-one, and Steen says he won't be out there for that match. He suggests that Sabin does the same, and he gives Shelley the chance to prove what he can do without him. Shelley and Sabin kind of shrug at this. They're happy. If Kevin Steen's not going to be out there, then there's no need for Sabin to be out there anyway. It's just whether you can trust Steen to keep his end of the bargain. We then go into the opening match of the night, which is probably looking quite a strange match, but I will explain. It's the three teams who in January had 1-0 records in Impact Wrestling or Evolve Wrestling. All these three teams won their only tag team matches, therefore they will face off. The winner will then have a 2-0 record, and they'll join the two other teams with 2-0 records in the company in 2012. That is Kevin Steen and Paul London, and it is the Kings of Wrestling. So we'll have another three-way next week, and it'll be the three teams with the best records who will face to become number one contenders to Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe's tag team championships. And this 10-minute match does also give us a chance to talk about that match, which was absolutely incredible. Of course, wrestling's greatest tag team do pick up the victory. It says an elimination. I always forget that 2v2v2 for some reason in the database is automatically an elimination match. It's just a one fall, but it is Amazing Red who is pinned by Shelton Benjamin in a decent match to open the show. Not really that great, but it does mean that Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin have picked up another win. They've had a slow start to 2012, but they do have 2-0 records, like I said, along with Steen and London and the Kings of Wrestling, and I think that will be a much better match next week. A new team in Steen and London, but 2 of those established teams who we have built this division around, and yeah, I'm looking forward to how that rates on next week's show, and whoever wins that, it's going to be a great pay-per-view match for Against All Odds. In the back, Steve Corino speaks with Brodie Lee, who is sat with Jimmy Jacobs, and when Corino approaches him, Brodie stands up so we can see just how big he is. Corino gives Brodie his brief for tonight's main event against AJ Styles. Corino says that Austin Aries isn't happy with how things went down at Genesis, and simply he wants Brodie Lee to destroy AJ Styles tonight, leave no trace of him at the end of this show. As Brodie nods his head in agreement, Austin Aries also stands up. He tells Brodie Lee that he doesn't care if he wins, loses or draws tonight. He just wants Brodie to guarantee, to promise him that AJ Styles does not walk out of this building tonight. He wants the big rig to get the job done, and if he can't, then he's going to leave the rest of the New Age of Honor out to finish the job. And when he says the rest of the group, he means the rest of the group. He turns to Jacobs and asks him where his boys are tonight. They were sat enjoying the view at Genesis as they watched Danielson and Wolf get a fluke victory over the Wolves. He says that Jacobs better get his men organised because he has plans for all of them tonight. Jacobs says that he's working on getting this smoothed over. He, just like everybody else in this group, doesn't want to see this escalate any further. If Aries needs them on board tonight, then Jimmy Jacobs guarantees he will make that happen. And while we're losing heat to the storyline there, hopefully it does add intrigue to what's going to go down at the end of the show. It is a big segment that I've got planned. Mischief then defeats Roxy in 3 minutes and 32. A lot more one-sided than you'd expect. A dominant victory for Mischief, who puts in a good 55 rated. Daphne is at ringside with Roxy, hence it advancing the storyline between Daphne and Mischief. Daisy Hayes also at ringside too, but neither of them get involved. It's too quick for anything else to go down other than Mischief taking out a lot of aggression on Roxy. As soon as the bell rings after the match and Mischief returns triumphantly to her feet, the New Age members' eyes are locked on Daphne. As they did last week on Evolve Wrestling, the 2 women are transfixed on one another until Daphne turns her attention to Daisy Hayes, who is also at ringside. Daphne follows Hayes around the ring, and Hayes is just doing whatever she can to get out of there. She runs up the ramp. She wants nothing to do with the Scream Queen. Back at the bottom of the stage, Daphne once again switches her focus to Mischief. The 2 women staring each other down until Roxy, who is now back up, leads Daphne up the ramp. But as she's backing away, Daphne and Mischief still maintaining that eye contact. So while there's not much happening between them in this storyline, we're trying to build something to play off the parallel between these 2 characters, and hopefully when that match happens it will have some interest rather than just throwing it out there on Impact. Tara is then interviewed in the back and speaks about the Impact Knockouts Championship match from Genesis. Tara says that people may remember that she was pretty angry when Mickie James cheated her out of a #1 contendership match 2 weeks ago, and she says that a lesser woman would have come out looking for revenge on Sunday, but Tara didn't. She respected Kurt Angle's decision was final, and for that, she feels like she should be rewarded. Gail Kim beat Mickie James on Sunday at the pay-per-view, but Tara's lost count of how many times that she's beaten Mickie. Next week, the week after all, whenever Gail's next defence is, Tara says it's only right that she be the one to get that opportunity, so fairly straightforward. Her sort of delusional logic is that because she didn't ruin the match on Sunday, she should get a title shot, and we'll see how that goes for her. We then go into the 3rd match of the night, and a really good match to end the first hour. Paul London with an 80, a level of performance we really haven't seen from him in this run with Impact yet, and Alex Shelley a 76 is really good to see, and it might be surprising that Paul London picks up the victory. Neither Kevin Steen or Alex Shelley are at ringside, but London using his experience and taking a leaf out of Kevin Steen's book as he kicks Alex Shelley between the legs and hits him with Steen's finisher, the package piledriver, showing that the two men are very much rubbing off on one another. But it's that idea that Alex Shelley, if he was having doubts, now sees that the tactics of London and Steen can be very, very fruitful as he loses to London. Kevin Steen then comes out after the match and he is applauding Paul London as his arm is raised by the referee. He is very, very enthusiastic and proud of London, and as Alex Shelley, who has by now rolled to the outside, is kind of getting back up and holding his neck after the impact of that package piledriver, Steen tries to give him, it's a little bit of a pep talk really, but he's saying that he needs to adopt his approach if he wants to get ahead, and just that kind of idea of basically the storyline is they're trying to lure him away from Chris Sabin. Shelley doesn't really react too much, and we're wondering if he's contemplating Steen's words or whether he's just in too much pain to do anything. He certainly doesn't leave immediately, but Chris Sabin comes out then and he's pushing Steen away. He's telling him to get out of his partner's face. Paul London then leaves the ring, seeing things heating up, and the four men are involved in a confrontation. Shelley kind of says this isn't worth it, and he tells Sabin to leave. The Motor City Machine Guns heading up the ramp together, and despite the best efforts of Steen and London to come between them, it doesn't appear to be working just yet. We then return to the second hour of the show, a solid promo from Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe as the new Impact World Tag Team Champions make their way to the ring. The commentators put over their absolutely legendary match from Sunday, one of the greatest tag team matches of all time, never mind in the short history of Impact Wrestling. Once in the ring, Bryan Danielson says that the two men are just as surprised as anybody that they're stood here together as World Tag Team Champions, saying that if you'd have told him this a year ago, he wouldn't have believed you. Desmond Wolfe adds that the idea of the two of them sharing a locker room was unthinkable until pretty recently, but now they stand together as World Tag Team Champions. They're playing over the absolute unbelievable nature of this pairing, mortal enemies. It seemed like they were destined to fight forever, but circumstances led to them coming together as a team, and now they are the World Tag Team Champions. Wolfe says that there is a lot that they could say about Sunday's match, but really, you'd have to see it to believe it. He says it was one of the toughest matches he's ever been in, taking nothing away from the American Wolves. Bryan says that they could talk, like Wolfe says, all night, but Kurt gave them a choice tonight. They could either come out and take as long as they wanted to discuss Sunday's match, or they could compete. For them, it was a no-brainer as they call out their opponents, the Young Bucks facing the World Tag Team Champions in non-championship action, but Larry Sweeney joining commentary and taking a lot of credit for this. He's a little bit out of favour with the Young Bucks after he seemed to split his attention between working with Hamada and with his own Sweet and Sour group. He sees this as a make good to them. He's given them an opportunity against the champions, and while they do well, decent performances, a 60 and a 72, they are no match for the World Tag Team Champions, and it's just about showcasing this team. They're our new World Tag Team Champions, so we wanted to give them a win. It's a solid match. Nick Jackson a little bit below the others as we see, but we get the crowd buzzing, and I'm happy with that match overall. A superb match as described by the game. Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe not getting long to celebrate their win, however, as the American Wolves and Steve Corino make their way out post-match. Steve Corino says that while there are no longer any automatic rematches in Impact Wrestling, he points to the fact that the American Wolves were in the ring with Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe this time last week, and they beat them. Everybody knows that Sunday was one of those 1 in a million fluke victories for Dragon and Wolfe, and there's no way that they could beat them again. Richards and Edwards want a rematch so they can settle this once and for all. Desmond Wolfe takes a microphone from ringside and says that if they were listening before the match, the new champions made it very clear that they were always up for a fight. Danielson accepts the challenge. There may be a number one contendership match for Against All Odds next week, but they'll see the American Wolves on Impact Wrestling in 7 days' time. A decent segment. We are losing heat to storylines, but they seem to fluctuate. When you have a really good match, it's going to come down, and then hopefully before the pay-per-view we can build storylines back up. I think it's always going to be something that happens. More importantly, we've got a huge match set for next week. We had Jeff Hardy and Samoa Joe announced earlier, then we've got Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe versus the American Wolves, so that is going to be an absolutely massive episode of Impact Wrestling, and that's something I'm keen to do, just keep building on this momentum and put on the best show we possibly can. How that works out long term, will we run out of matches and need to change things up? Who knows, but something that's happening tonight should freshen up the roster quite a bit, I have to say. Interviewed ahead of his main event match against Brodie Lee tonight, AJ Styles says that he isn't surprised to hear that the New Age of Honor have all kind of plans for him tonight. AJ Styles says that he's lost a lot of matches during his career, but he always got back up. Austin Aries, on the other hand, throws himself to the ground and has a tantrum. AJ Styles wonders how he keeps finding himself in these situations with these total prima donnas, but he can't pay any attention to Aries or the rest of that group for that matter, because tonight he's across the ring from a monster. Styles says that a lot of guys in the back have had encounters with Brodie Lee, and they all say the same thing. Before AJ can tell us what that is, his attention is diverted by something off camera, and we quickly see that it is Brodie Lee who jumps him, joined by Austin Aries. Lee takes his opponent for tonight down, laying into him, throwing him into the wall behind and destroying the interview set in the process. Austin Aries meanwhile barking orders, telling him to take AJ out before this match. Aries then hijacks the interview for himself, looking to send a message to the so-called originals of the New Age. Nobody else seems willing to tell Tyler and the Kings of Wrestling how it is, but he will. They seem to think that because they were the foundation stones of the New Age, they can do what they want. But it's time that they stopped hiding from their responsibilities as part of this group, and they do the right thing tonight. This isn't the time for Tyler, Claudio and Chris to be selfish, and he expects to see them when he gives the signal. So it's not a very good segment, but it does, again, as we have throughout the night, built to this main event. And I think, well, or I certainly hope that with what Austin Aries is doing, with the thing that we're setting up with Tyler Black and the Kings, we do have a lot of intrigue going into that main event. Back to ringside, we see the entrance of the Beautiful People, who are joined by Brooke, with Angelina Love celebrating the fact that they're back to bring some much needed glamour to the show. Unfortunately for the fans, Angelina Love is still suffering from a minor injury, so tonight Brooke is going to take her place. Angelina says that in her opinion, the Knockouts Tag Team Championship should have reverted back to the previous holders when Aja Kong was taken out, but with Rosita as the replacement, she's sure Brooke and Velvet will have no issues earning that title shot for when Love is ready to return to the ring, so they're ready for their opponents. Doesn't go so well for them, however, as Awesome Kong and Rosita defeat Brooke and Velvet Sky. Velvet does her very best during the match to try and avoid getting involved at all, really. She leaves most of the beating to go to Brooke, and it is Awesome Kong who dominates Brooke before deciding to tag in Rosita. Rosita climbs on the shoulders of Awesome Kong and does a splash to Brooke, so it is Rosita who gets the pin despite only doing one move in the match, and that's the story that we're building here basically with this. We lose heat to the storyline and cool the crowd, but it's the idea that Awesome Kong can do all the heavy lifting, and Rosita, it kind of doesn't even matter. Kong is good enough to hold these championships on her own, she just happens to need somebody there, so it might not be the best endorsement of the Knockouts Tag Team division that we could possibly give, but it's Brooke and Velvet, so I'm not too worried about hurting their credibility when this storyline progresses, of course, and we have more established teams facing them, maybe at the next pay-per-view. Then we'll have to question the booking some more and see what we can do with it. I have an end goal in mind for this storyline, so it's not going to be something where we just want to bury the Knockouts Tag Team division and move on. It's building to something, and I think it wasn't an ideal situation, but I don't want people to think that this is just me dismissing the Knockouts Tag Teams out of hand. Kong and Rosita stand tall, given their championships, as the commentators put over this odd couple pairing. They say though that as long as Awesome Kong keeps doing what she's doing, this team could be just as dominant as Double Kong. There's no reason to think that anybody can stop this team, to be perfectly honest. We then go to a segment that is footage from after Impact Wrestling, where Impact Wrestling cameras look to get the reaction of Gail Kim after she retained the Knockouts Championship against Mickie James. Gail puts over how difficult of a challenge that she faced in the form of Mickie James, and she is actually approached by Mickie as this is going on. We're trying to create this as a bit of a candid moment between the two. Of course, the camera's there, so how candid can it really be? But the idea is that Mickie is taking this quiet moment to show some respect to the champion and tells her that as much as it hurts her to see Gail have the championship and not her, she is proud of what Gail Kim is doing in the Knockouts division. Gail thanks Mickie, the two women hug, a rare moment between two competitors who have just faced off. Normally you'd expect them to be very, very heated and the loser maybe having an excuse, but that's not the case here. A nice gesture from Mickie James, who then walks off as Gail finishes her interview, saying that she doesn't know who is next, but her job is focused on being the best Knockouts champion she can possibly be. So a fairly average segment. and we're going to obviously do more with Gail Kim next week, but I didn't really have anything booked for the Knockouts champion, and I think that after a pay-per-view, you should always at least feature the champion a little bit, so that's what we've done, albeit El Generico isn't appearing on this week's Impact Wrestling, so kind of contradicting myself there. As we go into more build for this main event, we've done a lot of segments to try and hype this up, and first we see a recap of Brodie Lee's attack on AJ Styles before we go to Kurt Angle entering the medical room to speak with AJ Styles and the Impact Wrestling medical staff about his condition for the main event. Kurt tells AJ that he can find a replacement if that's what AJ wants, but AJ Styles of course insists that he is going to fight. The medical staff look less than certain as Styles forces himself up. He's clearly hurt, he's holding his ribs, he's in a lot of pain, but he's hurt, not injured. Kurt says that he's going to leave the final decision with AJ, and the Phenomenal One doesn't even give Kurt an answer, instead pushing him aside and walking out of the room. He's not going to turn down the chance to fight Brodie Lee after what just happened, and that main event is coming up next. Before it, however, we have a short video package that looks at the recent run of Hamada since her shocking attack on Sarita on Impact Wrestling's debut episode, turning on Taylor Wilde in the process. She has gone on to take out everybody in her path. It started with Sarita and Aja Kong, and most recently she defeated Sarita at Genesis. Hamada is put over as being one of the most dangerous knockouts in the division currently, and the commentators say that she looks ready to take on anybody and everybody. However, of course, we know Taylor Wilde, after what happened at Genesis, will want to get her hands on Hamada. There is that stipulation in place that if Taylor or Sarita lay a hand on Hamada outside of a match, then they will never get to fight her. So again, something that we're going to advance next week as we go into a underwhelming main event, I think it's fair to say. I did hope for better from that, but I'm not surprised as Brodie Lee isn't over yet and we haven't done that much with him to put him in a position to be in the main event. But it was just because he'd been involved with AJ Styles. On the first episode of Impact Wrestling, he attacked him, and then on the pay-per-view he tried to get involved, but it backfired, so he was sent out there by the New Age of Honor to try and redeem himself. And pretty much from the opening bell, AJ, as Brodie's making his entrance, goes straight after him. It quickly goes to the outside, and the referee's a little bit lenient in this match. They're going back and forth, and after the initial flurry of AJ's adrenaline running through, Brodie Lee does take control, and it's a 9-minute 10-second match. The vast majority is Brodie Lee in control, but he can't keep AJ Styles down. So much so that those words from earlier from Aries, it doesn't matter if he wins, loses or draws, it's just that he destroys AJ Styles. He loosens the steel steps, he sets up a table and he drags AJ Styles out of the ring. Up on the steps, he's going to powerbomb AJ from the steps through a table, but AJ slips out. AJ manages to return to the ring and in that sort of last gasp thing takes a dive, both men crashing through the table. It's not really any move, it's just AJ using his body to take Brodie down, and they both end up through the table. AJ Styles at 9 manages to crawl back into the ring. Brodie Lee still down, but it's that situation where AJ is the winner, but he certainly doesn't look like a winner because as the bell is rung, he's not able to get up and have his arm raised. He's just laid out in the ring. He's been through a lot tonight, of course, 9 minutes with Brodie Lee and the pre-match attack, but it looks like his night isn't done there. The situation appearing to go from bad to worse as Austin Aries and the Wolves are immediately out. Aries said that if Brodie couldn't get the job done himself, then he'd have to come out and take it into his own hands. AJ is surrounded by the New Age of Honor as Aries signals to the back. There's nothing, and Aries grows increasingly frustrating, once again signaling to the back. After a pause, Tyler Black, Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli come out, but they're not in any rush. They stroll to the ring and kind of have smirks on their faces. AJ Styles is coming round, and by the time he's sort of aware of what's going on, he finds himself surrounded by 6 members of the New Age of Honor. Aries, Richards and Edwards on one side, Tyler, Hero and Castagnoli on the other. Entering the ring, Austin Aries grabs AJ Styles, dragging him to his feet, and the Wolves instruct Tyler Black and the Kings of Wrestling to join them. The 6 key figures of the New Age of Honor are going to take AJ Styles down. That's Austin Aries' plan, but the 3 men stay on the outside. This causes Aries to snap and he throws AJ Styles back to the ground and demands that they get in the ring right now. The New Age Originals do now enter the ring, but stand smirking as Aries continues to bark orders. He wants them to lay into AJ Styles, who is on the ground. But the three men just stand there. When the Wolves join Aries in getting in their faces, the New Age Originals snap. This is their breaking point, and a brawl breaks out between the 6 members of the New Age of Honor. Austin Aries, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards on one side, Tyler Black, Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli on the other. This has been bubbling under for months. The egos were always there from the start of this formation of the New Age of Honor, but tonight is the night where Tyler Black and the Kings have had enough. They get the better of Austin Aries and the American Wolves and send them to the outside. They stand tall to end the show as a confused AJ Styles returns to his feet. There's a stare down between AJ and the New Age Originals at the end of the show, but that is officially the face turn of Tyler Black, Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli, and I'm really happy with how this storyline has been built up. These 3 men, I think, are well-liked members of the roster, and of course they've done a lot of bad things. They attacked some of our most beloved stars to make their name originally, but recently they have made a concerted effort to wrestle the right way and get the wins that they deserve, tried to distance themselves from the New Age of Honor. They wanted to prove that they could win without anybody's help, and when the rest of the group weren't willing to give them that opportunity, well, they had to make a decision. Unfortunately, this is one of the worst shows that we've done in a very, very long time. I did think it was a risk putting AJ v Brodie in the main event, but I thought everything else on the show would be able to carry us. I know we had a really good opening to the show, but yeah, it's fair overall, of course. It can't have too many complaints. A 78, it's disappointing to see us lose popularity because we haven't done that in a long, long time. I think next week's show with Joe and Hardy and with the World Tag Team Championships match should be fine, but we've got a huge story development there. Finally, after a year and a half in the company, the New Age Originals have turned face. They're going to breathe new life into the show, and it's going to give us a really fresh dynamic at the top of the card with this initial storyline of Tyler Black and the Kings versus Austin Aries and the Wolves, but also all the potential possibilities going forward. This was a show without CM Punk, I'll also note, so his absence probably felt. He will be back on next week's show, not least because we need him for a rating. Before then, however, we will go into Evolve Wrestling for this week, and there is going to be a few matches with the lower card members of the New Age of Honor against the Forefathers. That challenge that was made last week answered, but not necessarily with the guys who Beer Money, Daniels and Frankie Kazarian would have liked to be sharing the ring with. Beer Money defeat Future Shock in the opening match of the show with a DWI from Beer Money, seeing Kyle O'Reilly as the one pinned. This is just again about getting Future Shock some experience in the ring with these top or more established guys, and we also wanted to give Beer Money a decisive victory. After the match, Frankie Kazarian is out wasting no time. He joins Beer Money, who are celebrating their win, but he's not willing to wait. He demands to send Rhett Titus out, and we can see from Beer Money's reaction and from Frankie Kazarian's words, they're not really happy that the members of the New Age of Honor that they're getting to face are Rhett Titus and Future Shock, rather than the upper card guys who they initially laid down this challenge to. Nonetheless, it's a good promo from Frankie Kazarian, who in a poor match due to them not clicking partially, and because Frankie Kazarian, he's in a bit of a rut at the minute. These matches are designed that we want to get him out of this and build him back up, because he hasn't been built that strongly, if we're honest. But in 7 minutes and 21, with a decisive victory, he hits a fade to black for the win. Following the match, Christopher Daniels joins the rest of his stablemates, and it's again Frankie Kazarian taking the lead with this. He's the one who, out of the four, I'd say, has the biggest chip on his shoulder. They're not happy. Everybody knows this isn't who they wanted to be facing. Whatever's going on with the New Age of Honor, we saw that chaos on Impact Wrestling. They don't want to get involved in that. Just because they now have some new rivals in Tyler Black and the Kings of Wrestling, it doesn't mean that Fortune are going to be overlooked. They want Aries and the Wolves, and they want them soon. We then get a promo from the home of the Briscoes. They're obviously on their farm or whatever, and it's just sort of reintroducing them. They've been sitting on the sidelines, they've been watching, and they're not happy with that. They were on the first ever Impact Wrestling, then they were sent home. They were told that Impact had called them when they needed them, but the Briscoes are done watching, and they've sent this message in to Evolve Wrestling to make that clear. So I have got a plan now for the Briscoes reintroduction, and we just need to do a few weeks of building that up before we go full steam ahead with it. Roderick Strong then promotes his match against D'Angelo Dinero in the main event. He will be challenging for the Evolve Wrestling Championship. Then we see a 6-man match, El Generico, Creed and Dutt defeating Team Canada. The storyline's been ongoing for a while and this just draws a line under it. El Generico pinning Tyson Dukes with a haluva kick, and again it is a bad time for Team Canada. El Generico standing tall with Creed and the man he beat at the pay-per-view, Sonjay Dutt. But yeah, Generico helped these two last week, so they're all in a 6-man, and hopefully a feel-good moment for these three celebrating in the ring. Probably not the best use of your X Division champion, but again, we've got plans for the X Division going forward, and I think the next pay-per-view match is going to be a really, really good one. And then with Destination X coming up, I've got another really great plan, or at least in my opinion. Maybe people will disagree, maybe they won't, but I think we've got a really exciting few months coming up for the X Division. We then get a promo that's not very good because both women struggle when trying to improvise dialogue. Pretty straightforward. Alyssa Flash and Sarah Del Rey, they do have their differences, but they found that when they teamed together, well, it just clicked. They announced the formation of their tag team, and of course their ultimate goal is to take the Knockouts Tag Team Championships from Awesome Kong and Rosita. The main event sees D'Angelo Dinero successfully retain his title. The fans hated the ending to this match, fair enough. During the match, Adam Pearce comes out and distracts Roderick Strong, which then allows D'Angelo Dinero to hit the DDE. I am going to change the product of Evolve Wrestling, I think, because it's far too restrictive for what I want to do. Surely just a distraction from Adam Pearce isn't going to be enough to screw up the whole match, and it being a 49 from two really good performers and guys who, yeah, I just think that's a little bit daft. I should have actually set up the storyline here. I am going to go back to the booking screen, so I'll just be 1 second. And the post-show segment isn't great, so I probably need not add it to the storyline, but Adam Pearce goes face-to-face with D'Angelo Dinero to end the show. A newcomer, hopefully putting him on a bit of a level, giving him a bit of a boost by having him go face-to-face with D'Angelo Dinero to end the show. And I think that's what Evolve's all about, getting some fresh faces in there. Adam Pearce has impressed me early on, so we wanted to put him straight into a decent storyline. He's of course got his issues with Broderick Strong, but also teasing something down the line with D'Angelo Dinero, so a good way to end what will be a poor show as I expected. But despite the ratings of both shows not really living up to what I'd hoped, I am very happy storyline wise with how this week has gone. Evolve Wrestling just ticking a few things over, but I more specifically mean the main event segment and what that sets up. Sting giving some praise to Consequences Creed is nice. The storyline basically playing out backstage, Alex Shelley getting some good words from Kevin Steen, and Nick Jackson getting praise from AJ Styles, so all good notes. That's what I like to see. I don't like it when people are coming in slagging off their co-workers, but that's week 5 done, and I hope that everybody else is excited as I am for the Face New Age Originals, because I don't think that I put it across too well actually when I was describing it. I felt like it should have felt bigger, but essentially what I should have said was it's basically going off the face turn that the Shield had in real life. A lot of what I've done with the New Age, with it being around a similar time as the Shield did exist in real life and Tyler Black being the front and centre kind of thing, I have borrowed from the Shield on a number of occasions, and that was another instance. Their face turn in real life I thought was so well done and got such a great reaction, and fingers crossed the turn of Tyler Black and the Kings of Wrestling, who I think are such great wrestlers in ring that the fans do want to cheer them, and the guys who I think are going to be very, very popular, huge parts of the company going forward. So yeah, hopefully that came across well, and I'll obviously know when I listen back, but you'll have obviously heard it as well going on, so I will end the video here. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you're looking forward to next week's show just as much as I am. Cheers.